at this historic moment, we are recognizing and celebrating this Juneteenth week. Amen? A whole week of celebration around our freedom that began, as many of you know, on Wednesday with that historic hearing on H.R. 40 in Congress. How many of you all watched that? Now, this was historic as we move forward in our struggle for reparations. And the most appropriate place for us to gather is Detroit. And when I say gather, of course, I'm speaking of the 30th annual convention of the National Coalition of Blacks for Reparations in America, and COBRA. Seated behind me on my left and right is the board of COBRA. Just going to ask them to stand so we can give them a round of applause. Ladies and gentlemen, the board of COBRA. Now, in the interest of time, I've been asked not to acknowledge any particular individuals, and the person who told me that is one that didn't want to be acknowledged, but I must say, I do have to acknowledge her because we couldn't be in Detroit. I couldn't have permission to come to Detroit without her permission. We appreciate her activism, her work on the council, her work with John Conyers, her work with the NAACP, her work on the air. Please acknowledge Mama Joanne Watson. I just want to do that. And another name embedded in that introduction is also John Conyers. One's work in freedom fighting and struggle is defined by their long-standing eternal vigilance, not because of any accusation, and we're not judging that, but John Conyers' place in history is secure. Amen? And I want to honor him and say that, for it was over 30 years ago. How many years now? 30? 35? 30 years. 1989, exactly 30 years that H.R. 40, that he introduced H.R. 40. Some people are confused and say things and under the impression that some individual or some individual group or some individual article or some individual moment is responsible for the popular mainstream discussion around reparations. None of that is true. As Dr. John Henry Clark taught us, history is a continuum. So every contribution has played a role in the place we are today. Be it John Conyers 30 years ago, being the work of COBRA over the past 3 decades, or be it David Walker's appeal, or be it the activism of Callie House. All of these things have led to the place where we are now. Our history does not happen in a vacuum. European history, the academicians make it a straight line. But our people, African history is in a circle, sisters and brothers. And so all of these people have played a role, including all of you here. And then years from now, we'll look back and applaud those of you here tonight for the role you played in our reparations struggle. Amen? And so this is a great moment and a great time and a great discussion. And we all have played a role in that and made a contribution. One of the aspects of this new H.R. 40 legislation, for those of you who don't know, is to not only deal with the Ma'afa, if you will, or the slavery that was waged against our people, but the vestiges of slavery. So it just doesn't stop in 1865. But everything that flows, all of slavery's offspring, from lynchings to Jim Crow to the terrorism of voter suppression, segregation, and even up to the criminal injustice system we all are faced with today, inclusive of the modern day lynchings at the hands of law enforcement, police lynchings, which we know happen all too often every day. And so it's no longer a question of studying whether those things exist, studying whether they are vestiges. Now it's just about a study of how do we repair them and what is the repair. And mind you, as our brother alluded to, some of our repair has to happen upstairs. And it's going to require us to love one another and respect one another and end some of our conflicts with one another.